Let's talk about a word that's very common, yet very easy to overuse. Today's lesson is all about very, how to use it in basic and advanced ways, when you should not use it, and you'll learn a few alternatives that are better in specific situations. Also, I'll talk about why a word list like this is not very helpful for developing natural speaking and writing skills. And of course, you can download the free PDF with all of today's notes and an advanced quiz by clicking the link in the description. So, what's the problem? If it's grammatically correct, why shouldn't you say very? Well, you can. I've already used it 6 times. Sometimes there's no better word for the job, but you have to make sure that you're using it in the right context. Knowing when, where, how, and how often to use very, or any word in English, is crucial. Very is an intensifier. It means to a high degree. It adds emphasis to an adjective or an adverb. Let's look at some examples. She's a very good singer. How good? Very good. How happy were your parents when you told them the news? They were very happy. You often hear people using this in negative statements to say something in a softer, more indirect way. I read the book my coworker recommended, but it wasn't very interesting. This really means the book was boring. My sister's not very happy with me right now, meaning she's annoyed or angry with me. Now, if you're modifying a verb, make sure that you use very much. We enjoyed our vacation very much. He doesn't talk very much, meaning he almost doesn't talk. I appreciate your support very much. A more advanced meaning of very is exact or same. It functions as an adjective that comes between a determiner, like the or that, and a noun. I turned off the lights to go to sleep, and at that very moment, the doorbell rang, meaning that exact moment. If you travel to Washington, D.C., you can visit the very place where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous speech. Another option is to use very for emphasis, before superlative adjectives like best or worst, or before words like own and same. Finally, I have my very own car. Here we're emphasizing that this car belongs to me and no one else. Hollywood celebrities only eat at the very best restaurants. My best friend and I were born on the very same day. Let's talk about when and why you shouldn't use very. First, you won't believe this, but most of the time, very is considered a bit formal and impersonal in everyday spoken English. When I say impersonal, I mean it can sound objective. If something is objective, that means it's based on facts, not feelings or opinions. It's like you're removing or detaching your personal feeling or reaction from the situation, and you're just focusing on the fact. However, if you're talking about something that's based on your personal opinions or experiences, then it's the opposite, subjective. Many of the things that we talk about with others and the things that we react to every day are subjective. This is why when you listen to native speakers, you'll notice that other intensifiers like so and really are much more common in spoken English.
Faculty, staff, everybody on this campus works so hard.
Which is actually, so enormous and so amazing.
And I really, really love this question.
So that's another thing I'm really proud of and really, really excited about.
Now, we have to be careful here because the grammatical structure is a little different depending on what you're modifying. She's very nice. She's really nice. She's so nice. All of these sentences are fine. The first one is just a bit more formal and impersonal. The other ones are more subjective, personal, and a little more natural. She's a very nice person. She's a really nice person. She's a so nice person? This is incorrect. We have to say, she's such a nice person. Nice is an adjective, but a nice person is a noun phrase. Use so before an adjective, but use such a or an before a singular count noun, or just such before plural count nouns and non-count nouns. For example, you are all such great students. This is such interesting information. I enjoyed this movie very much. I enjoyed this movie so much. I enjoyed this movie really? The correct sentence is, I really enjoyed this movie. Put really before the thing that you're modifying. And we can add another common option to this list. I enjoyed this movie a lot. Next, if you're taking an English exam like the IELTS or the TOEFL, pay attention to this. Most writers and writing teachers recommend not using very in formal or academic writing. You can use it occasionally, but it can quickly sound too repetitive. In writing, precision is key. Many times, the word very is too vague. If something is vague, that means it's unclear because it's not exact enough or there aren't enough details. Is it possible for everything to be very good, very bad, or very interesting? The more you use intensifiers, the less effective they become. Replacing a phrase like very important with an adjective like crucial allows the reader to better understand your personal feeling or experience. The best way to improve your writing skills is to ask yourself, is there a better, more precise, or more interesting way to express my thoughts in this context? My main point here is that in formal writing, try not to use an intensifier until you really need one. So far, I've given you reasons why you shouldn't use very, but there's one situation in which you cannot use it. In order to understand this, we have to compare very to other intensifiers of different degrees. Now, this is not a complete list, but let's look at some of the most common ones, from lowest to highest intensity. A little or a bit are more informal. Somewhat is more formal. Fairly. This is more than a little, but it's much less than very. Pretty. This is more informal, but it's so common. I think this is an essential adverb for conversational American English. Its meaning and intensity really depends on the context, but it often implies that a quality is noticeable, surprising, or more than expected. For example, if I say, the restaurant was pretty good, that means it was not very good or extremely good, but it was good to the point where I was surprised. It was higher than my expectations. Next, we have really or so in conversational English, very, and quite. Not quiet, quite. Different word. I should mention that there's a difference in the way quite is used in British English and in American English. Generally, quite is much more common in British English, and it's a bit weaker than this. Its meaning is closer to pretty or fairly. Now, even though the intensity of quite is stronger in American English, it's not as common and it sounds quite formal. And finally, we have extremely. These are all adverbs that we put before an adjective, but not all types of adjectives, only gradable ones. If an adjective is gradable, it means that we can have different levels of that quality. For example, someone can be a little tired, pretty tired, or maybe very tired. However, if we try to replace tired with the adjective exhausted, then it doesn't work. It's impossible to say a little exhausted or fairly exhausted because exhausted is naturally an extreme adjective. It already contains the meaning of very. If we want to intensify the meaning of an extreme adjective, then we can use the adverb absolutely. So you can say very tired, but not absolutely tired. You can say absolutely exhausted, but not very exhausted. Another example, bad is a gradable adjective. You can say somewhat bad, very bad, but not absolutely bad. Let's compare that to the extreme adjective terrible. Absolutely terrible sounds natural, but very terrible or somewhat terrible, these do not make sense. There needs to be a natural balance between the level of the adverb and the adjective. Now, there are other adjectives that are not extreme, but they are absolute. The qualities of these adjectives don't have different levels, so it's impossible to use them with an intensifier like very. It doesn't make sense to say something like very employed or very universal. There are a few exceptions to this rule, and sometimes native speakers break this rule intentionally to add humor or style to the situation.
And cold water fish can get pretty unhappy. Also, a little dead.
Are you single?
I am so single. I'm very single.
There are many different intensifiers that are similar to very or very much, but some of these alternatives collocate with specific words in English. A collocation is a group of words that are frequently used together in natural speaking and writing. If you learn vocabulary without paying attention to how it collocates, that would be like trying to complete a puzzle without having all the pieces. An essential piece of the puzzle is knowing about collocations. The first one I have for you is highly. This means to a high level or a high standard. It often collocates with very positive adjectives like highly influential, highly educated, and highly competitive. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that you should only use highly and never use very with these adjectives. But when you're reading and listening, you'll notice that, on average, highly is more common in this context. Let's test this by looking at the Google Books Ngram Viewer. This is a tool that shows the frequency of words and phrases. The information is collected from thousands of books that were published from the year 1500 all the way to 2019. So you can see if and when something is commonly used. Let's try it together. I'll compare highly influential to very influential. Okay, so we can see that both phrases are used by English speakers, now more than ever before, but highly influential is more common. I'll put the link to this tool in the description so you can try it. If you're a nerd, like me, then I highly recommend it. Oh, there's another collocation, highly recommend. Another useful alternative is strongly. This collocates with verbs, especially verbs that are about having an opinion. When I think of strongly, the first words that come to mind are the verbs agree and disagree. You can also strongly support or strongly oppose something.
They'll strongly disagree with it. They'll think it's a dangerous idea.
I think it's a very important idea. I strongly support it.
Next, I want to share one of my favorite alternatives for very that I personally use every day. Ridiculously, pronounced with 5 syllables. Ridiculously. It comes from the adjective ridiculous, which means that something is very silly in a way that seems unbelievable or unreasonable. If something is ridiculously cheap or ridiculously expensive, that means it's far too cheap to believe or far too expensive to believe. It sounds a lot more personal and emotional than very.
Like, our attention spans are ridiculously short.
Come on, that is ridiculously fun.
Every language has collocations, and they're extremely important for fluency. I've included some more common collocations with example sentences, and you can take the quiz in the PDF. Now, let's talk about a major reason why you should use very. Like I mentioned earlier, oftentimes very sounds impersonal and objective. So if you try to replace very with a fancier word, it could sound emotional or personal in a situation that doesn't require additional emotion. There are a few examples of this on this list of words that I found on the internet. They want you to expand your vocabulary, and that's always a great goal. But there's a huge problem. Many of these words would sound really unnatural if you tried to use them in most everyday conversations. You cannot simply replace very plus an adjective with one of these words if you don't know how, where, when, or how often this word is used by native speakers. If you don't have all of this information, it's possible for you to sound patronizing. This means that you're showing that you think you're better or more intelligent than another person. You really want to avoid sounding patronizing, especially in another language. There are many words that are near synonyms, but perfect synonyms are extremely rare. Some would argue that perfect synonyms don't exist at all. It's almost impossible to find two words or phrases with the very same meaning used in the very same context every time. Each word has a unique feeling with subtle differences in how and when they're used. Synonyms are like paint colors. Sure, they have similar meanings, but if you look closely, maybe one color is a little darker or lighter than the other. It doesn't work if you try to paint two similar colors on the same wall. So even though it's important to keep expanding your vocabulary, very is a word that we can occasionally fall back on when we can't think of another option. Let's review all the things to consider before we decide to use very. And remember, these are not strict rules. This is just general advice to think about most of the time. First, are you only stating an objective fact, or are you attaching a subjective opinion or emotion? Is very the right level of intensity, or is another adverb like pretty or fairly more accurate? Next, what's the context? Am I having a normal conversation, or am I writing a formal essay for an exam? Does very make sense with this adjective? So is the adjective gradable or extreme or absolute? Are there more typical collocations with this particular adjective or verb, like highly educated or strongly agree? If yes, try using it. If not, let's ask one final question. Have I repeated very many times? If the answer is yes, try to think of another descriptive alternative. And if the answer's no, okay, we can use very, in moderation. If you enjoyed this lesson, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, I'm excited to announce that I'm launching a Patreon community. Members can participate in my live stream classes, ask me more detailed questions, listen to podcast episodes, receive exclusive video lessons and activities, and more. To learn more, you can go to patreon.com/YourWorldInEnglish or click the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in class. Bye.